How do you become a thought leader? How do you earn money from what you know and be rewarded for those years of expertise and experience that you've built up? In this video, we'll look at the thought leadership example of Cal Newport and his best-selling book, Deep Work. And I'll share 5 lessons you can take from Cal's career that you can apply to your own thought leadership journey. What is deep work? Eric Barker called it the superpower of the 21st century. I named Cal Newport's book Deep Work Book of the Year from over 50 that I read back in 2016. Most importantly, I've redesigned my work, my day, my business, and my life around doing deep work. This video is one expression of that. I even referred to deep work in the video Thought Leader Meaning as one of the key skills that thought leaders need to master. Can you tell I love this book? It's one of my all-time favorites because it's such a powerful idea and it's given me so much reward as well. So let's start with the obvious question, what is deep work? Here's Cal Newport's definition in an interview by his good mate Lex Fridman.
So, I mean, it's my term for when you're focusing without distraction on a cognitively demanding task, which is something we've all done, but we had never really given it a name necessarily that was separate from other type of work. And so I gave it a name and said, let's compare that to other types of efforts you might do while you're working.
One of the things I love about deep work is that it's such a simple idea. It's 2 4-letter words. You can't get much simpler than that. And best of all, when you say deep work, it immediately positions the opposite, being shallow work. So shallow work is easy to do. It's logistical. For example, it's making an appointment or scheduling a meeting. You can do shallow work while you're distracted, while you're listening to music or talking with other people. It has limited value and it's easy to replicate. In contrast, deep work is really deep thinking. It's about complex things. It pushes you to your limits. It requires a high level of concentration. It provides new value. It improves your skills, and it's hard to replicate. Some examples of shallow work include emails, meetings, social media, and anything you can do while you're multitasking. Some examples of deep work include defining strategy, coming up with new ideas, building tough skills, and working on wicked problems. One thing Cal Newport says in his book is that deep work is not a new idea. In the industrial age, most of the work was shallow work. It was people standing by machines, pumping out widgets. It was easy to learn, the work was repetitive, and most importantly, it didn't require a lot of brain power. Back then, in the industrial age, only a handful of people, and usually the educated elite, were doing deep work of any sort. These were the scientists, the authors, and perhaps the leaders of the country. They were effectively making the decisions for everybody else. In the information age, this has flipped. Now, most of our work requires deep thinking. It requires deep work. And that's because we're dealing with ideas and we're dealing with information and we're not pumping out widgets anymore. So, why is this important? Cal Newport points out that deep work has increased in value in recent years. And it comes down to 2 things. Doing deep work provides a high level of value, and so few people are doing it. This leaves you with an important career choice to make. Do you want to do valuable work and be rewarded for it? Or you can do mediocre work. You can be rewarded for your mediocre work and you run the risk of being taken over by a machine. Now let's look at the author, Cal Newport. Who is he and how did he come to write deep work? Previously I included Cal Newport in the video What is Thought Leadership, where I showed 7 examples of thought leaders. And I pointed to him not just because he does great work, but because he also is a unique example. Cal Newport is a computer science professor at Georgetown University, and he's produced over 60 academic papers that have been cited over 3,500 times. That's one strong academic career. But that's not why we're talking about him today. Cal is also the author of 7 New York Times best-selling books, and none of them to do with computer science. In other words, Cal might be a thought leader in his computer science days, but he's also a thought leader in his side hustle. He effectively writes his books, including Deep Work, in his spare time away from his day job. It started out in 2007 when he was a graduate student writing about study skills. And that's morphed into writing about the intersection between digital technology and culture. So how would we know if this was a genuine thought leadership example? Well, clearly we need some benchmarks or some criteria to measure it against. In my previous video on thought leadership strategy, I made the big claim that there were 3 essential things that every thought leader needs to build. And they are money or financial capital, ideas or intellectual capital, and people or social capital. And this gives us 3 basic questions to use as an assessment tool to find out whether someone actually is being a thought leader or not. Do you earn money from your ideas? Do you design, build, and share your ideas? And do other people use your ideas? Cal Newport easily meets these 3 criteria. He's generating ideas that he publishes in his book that earn him some money, and he's building up a really healthy following online. So what can we learn from Cal Newport about how to become a thought leader? Here are 5 lessons that you can take home and apply to your career. The first one is an important one. I meet so many people that get hung up on whether their ideas are original or not. While having original ideas does happen, it's also very rare. And interestingly, Cal admits, as he did in the previous video, that deep work was not a new idea. And this is evident in the Google Ngram graphs that show word usage in books, and also in Google Trends. Cal started writing about deep work in 2012, and you can see from both of those graphs there's a lot of history before then. I think the question around originality is the wrong one. Instead, I think it's more important that your idea shifts the context of your audience. And I spoke about that in the previous video when I said context shifting was the most important skill that a thought leader could develop. A context shift occurs when you use a new label to describe something that's going on. And they're precisely the words that Cal used in that interview. And Cal's example of deep work is a really good one. It's not that he came up with a new term or a new topic around deep work. It's that he found an existing term and was able to label it to a new situation that gave us all fresh insight. And the big lesson here is don't fuss about being original. So how does deep work provide a context shift? And I'm going to share something that's my interpretation, not something that Cal's ever said, but at least it references back to some other common ways of thinking about the same issue of what to work on. What I want to show is how Cal Newport has relabeled our approach to what is important and what we need to be working on. And that's by giving us some new terminology, some new labels. You might have seen this one before. It comes from Stephen Covey's best-selling book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's a classic 4-quadrant matrix that helps us decide what to focus on. Covey's diagram originally came from General Dwight Eisenhower, who later became US President. Eisenhower's matrix actually had these labels on them, so it was a same matrix but just with the extra labels. And while it's not a perfect fit, I think it follows that Cal Newport has relabeled these same squares. Effectively, he's saying the not urgent but most important work to do is deep work. And often the urgent work that's not that important is the shallow work. And the big lesson here is instead of trying to be original, Focus on relabeling how people currently see things. To be a thought leader means you earn money from your ideas. And to do this, you fundamentally have to give your ideas some form. And Cal's approach to this was that he's written about deep work in his blog for many years, so you can go onto the website and look at that. And you can also buy his book. The big idea here is to give your ideas form so other people can buy them. Do other people use these ideas? Absolutely, and I'm one of them. There's also plenty of other evidence to show that other people are talking about and using Cal's work around deep work. The book is a New York Times bestseller. His personal website has a domain authority of 65, which is pretty high for an individual person. And if you go onto YouTube, there are hundreds of videos of people talking about deep work. While none of these are conclusive stats, they do point to him having a strong following. And the big lesson here is to grow your audience and have people use your ideas, you need to be sharing them. And finally, how did Cal come up with the idea of deep work? If you want to be a thought leader, there's no escaping the simple truth that you have to do the work. Well, I don't know the specific trigger for when Cal Newport thought, deep work's the answer. It's very clear that Cal has done the work. First, he has a full-time job as a college professor, which would be enough for most of us. But he has also written and published over 1,100 blog posts since August 2007. That's at least one blog post a week for almost 14 years. On top of that, he's also written other articles published in other places, plus he's written these 7 books. From my experience, when you engage in an idea and you're teasing it out and you're trying to share it with somebody else by writing it down, that's when the ideas evolve. In this case, it's evolved into something pretty big. And the big lesson here, if you want to be a thought leader, there's no escaping the eternal truth that you have to do the work. Let's wrap up what we've covered here. Why is deep work a genuine thought leadership example? And for me, it meets our 3 thought leadership criteria. Do you earn money from your ideas? Do you design, build, and share your ideas? And do other people use your ideas? The 5 lessons you can apply to your thought leadership journey today are: don't fuss about being original. Instead, focus on creating a context shift. Give your ideas some form so people can buy it. Share your ideas with others regularly. And do the work. Wait, there's one more thing I need to add. Stop using the excuse that you don't have the time to do the work that matters. Bottom line, you have the time. And if you don't think you have the time, consider Cal Newport's situation. He has a full-time job as a college professor. He writes his books and his blogs on the side. He's devoted to his family. And he doesn't do any work in the evenings. It's worth noting here that Cal Newport proudly claims that he's never had a social media account. He doesn't spend time promoting himself. He spends his time doing the work. What are you spending your life on today? If you want more details and examples about this episode, check out the blog link in the description below. And if you want some coaching on this, head over to geoffmcdonald.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.